Yeah, thanks, Eva. I talked to Valunga the other day, so that was good because he's not too well at the moment, but yeah, it was good to have a chat to him. And as of this morning, the bad news is the pizza and parenting program's been scrubbed, so we won't get into that. I got an email this morning saying you're no longer required, so that's another story. I wish I'd talked to you, Eva, and read Daniel Aldrich before I started, because bonding, bridging and linking is probably a really good way of expressing what I'm hoping to present today. So my name's John Kinniburgh. I'm a resident of Sarsfield and a member of the Sarsfield Community Association. These are basically my ramblings, so hopefully they're not too boring, which is my way of presenting my insight into the recovery to date from the 2019-20 summer bushfires, both personally and mainly as a community. Is this going to work? Yep. I've had close family connections to Sarsfield since 1973, 51 years ago. The Rooks, the Marstons at the top of the Sandhill, local policeman Derek Adams, the Costas were all part of my life, a big part of my life back then. Some years later, I worked at the Sarsfield Primary School. I coached the Sarsfield Junior cricketers, and I played a bit myself as a fill-in at the Sarsfield Cricket Club. Try again. Many years later, in the early 2000s, we bought a house and property on the hill in Sarsfield, overlooking the Nicholson River. Not quite Malakuta, but it's still very nice, and the Gippsland Lakes. We became Sarsfield residents. The Sarsfield I moved into 18 years ago was very different to the Sarsfield I knew in the 70s, 80s and 90s. The Sarsfield we moved into had no school, no cricket or tennis club. Most of the local identities and old-timers had moved on. What had not changed was the beauty, peace and tranquility of life in Sarsfield. Sarsfield, a hidden secret of East Gippsland. Many small allotments had been developed, and new and old tree changes took advantage of the convenience of living 10 minutes from Bairnsdale Metropolis, close to the lakes, the snow, sitting on their own part of the Nicholson River. But the community aspect of Sarsfield had diminished. Now, there are some fire photos in this next bit, so just take them in the spirit they're meant. On the 30th of December 2019, things changed. That evening, the summer bushfire decimated Sarsfield, destroying 80 residences, hundreds of sheds, outbuildings, fences, animals, gardens and bushland. We lost our own home, sheds and all else, and everyone connected with Sarsfield was impacted in some way. That night lit a spark, which could also reignite a community. Out of the community trauma, anxiety, tears, grief and loss, this spark loosely led to the formation of the SCA, the Sarsfield Community Association, which I'm here to talk about today. All of the research from previous disasters recommends community-led recovery. Should be, federal, state rhetoric, all pushes community-led recovery. Thus, after the initial emergency response period, fire-impacted communities, and some not so impacted, formed community recovery groups. On the ground across East Gippsland, the whole community stepped up. Groups such as Rotary Lions, churches, charities, international philanthropic organisations, and everyone's next-door neighbour chipped in. It was an amazing response. Out at Sarsfield, local residents were on the job immediately. Cuppers were made, the hall was opened up as a drop-in support centre, informal assessments were made as to the needs of affected residents, and a group was formed to act as the informal bushfire support group. They were the face of Sarsfield, the conduit between agencies, BRV, support, volunteers. They organised the first dinners, dropped off hampers and tried to keep track of the many evacuated families in emergency accommodation elsewhere. It was chaotic at that time, but the instinctive responses of these people, who loosely morphed into the Sarsfield Community Association, was amazing. Preparing for this chat, Preparing for this chat, I ruffled through photos, emails, documents and lots more to gain a sense of what the Sarsfield Community Association has been doing over the past 50 months. I was blown away, flabbergasted. Having been involved in sporting clubs, community groups and schools over many years, I certainly know and acknowledge the power of volunteerism. But this SCA is next level. The hundreds of photos on screen may act as a prompt to illustrate the magnitude of the volunteerism, and hopefully this will be reflected during the chat. Over the recent 2-week period, I list some of the business undertaken by our volunteer SCA, and again, this is only the tip of the iceberg. Yeah, give it a bit longer. So I'm going to flick through these really quickly, so hopefully they come up quickly. This is just some of the stuff that's gone on over a 2-week period. I don't know why it's so slow to come up. There's a bit more. I'm just going to keep pressing. Not going to talk about any of them, but it gives you a bit of a feel. And again, this is just the tip of the iceberg. Over the course of the recovery, we still going? Yeah, we're still going. Over the course of the recovery, the SCA initiated community-informed plans similar to Mallacoota to set the future of Sarsfield. Sarsfield 2030 was created after numerous interviews, surveys, community meetings, and it sets the vision of what the SCA is making into a reality. Whilst it was time-consuming and a laborious process, the SCA felt strongly that it should be owned by the community. Whilst the achievements of the SCA are many and the future is driving our daily work, a few highlights and achievements are worthy of special mention. Now, a lot of this is going to be in photos. We're extremely proud of our Sarsfield events, which include Friday night feeds. They've become a cornerstone of our SCA activities. All sorts of weird and wonderful Friday night feeds, including a Mad Happers Melbourne Cup theme, Fire Pot Festival, Christmas in July, Fire Readiness event, Winter Festival, Lantern event, music themes have brought our community together to give SCA the opportunity to survey, check in and inform our future direction. Other events include a bushfire preparedness expo, recent January Twilight Market, music and food trucks, youth kayaking down the Nico, just to name a few. Another highlight is the Sarsfield Snaps photographic project, involving many of the forgotten young people. Photographic lessons, a public display along School Road, Sarsfield, exhibitions in Bairnsdale and at the Melbourne Zoo, and publication of snaps, calendars and glossy coffee table book are some of the obvious highlights. But the sense of pride, achievement and confidence in our young people was amazing and the highlight. Although Snaps is winding down, a simple idea became bigger than Ben-Hur. The Sarsfield Snaps project was acknowledged with the Victorian Community Resilience Award for 2023, and a deputation of young snappers travelled to Perth in November for the National Awards. The final highlight I want to share, one more snap, sorry, is the Sandhill Ashes. The Sandhill Ashes has run for the past 3 years as a social, inclusive cricket match between fire-affected Clifton Creek and Sarsfield communities. It attracted big crowds, celebrities, and Sarsfield leads the campaign 2 close victories to 1. The Sandhill Ashes urn was turned out of a piece of recovered burnt tea tree stump from the Sir Huson's flat in Sarsfield. Whoop, I'll go back a couple there. What happened there? Thank you. So the next one is a few slides of our volunteers, and this is a lot about volunteers, but our volunteers have been acknowledged outside our community. So we've got a Citizen of the Year, a event of the year. It'll come up here somewhere. Event of the Year, Citizen of the Year, an OAM, Emergency Services Award. We're right again? Yep. What else have we got? Anyway, lots and lots of acknowledgement beyond our internal sort of community. So how does the SCA did it? And this is why I wished I'd read Eva's book, not Eva's book, but the book she reads beforehand. So I basically sat down and thought about what makes our SCA work. And some of the things have already come up in the Mallacoota model. But the committee has several key portfolios and stick to those. So we've got events and community, environment, traffic safety, and enacting the plan. After the initial response, the focus of recovery was and still is very much about people and their welfare. It's still, we're after grants and all that stuff and buildings and, you know, that's an ongoing thing, but it's basically about people and their welfare. Slowly. Its patience has been tested, but the future had to be carefully planned. Lots and lots of consultation. We talked about that before. So, yeah, that sort of led to the more about a bright future. We've used external consultants to do some of the more professional stuff for our convenience, and that's all been funded externally. So thank you very much. But for writing plans, doing business plans, all that sort of stuff. We're all volunteers. And within the group, it was acknowledged and accepted that we all had our own lives and our own curveballs that our lives threw at us. Sickness, family tragedy, travel, COVID, it all impacted on our ability to volunteer at various times. But there's been no pressure and there's been a big understanding this always goes on. The group is extremely diverse, similar to the Mallacoota group. Newcomers, long-time residents, professionals, retired, semi-retireds, people with young families, a couple and a wide range of ages, male and female. We've got a mix of doers, thinkers and ideas people, which certainly helps when you've got a community group. We have a wise mentor, Malcolm. That one's come up, yeah. Malcolm from Strathewen, who's, I think, 15 years into their recovery and still very involved in their recovery, but he attends our meeting via Teams and he's been an amazing help for us. Similar to Mallacoota, there's never been tension or conflict within our group, and I'm not quite sure why that happens, but that's the way it is. So we've never had any tension or conflict. We have had changing of the guard, so the group's changed a little bit, but it's always been a fluid process and there's always been a stable element there. Some people have moved over interstate or whatever, and some people have been really ill. Where are we up to? Yeah, so humour. Humour has been very important in our group. We have this giant tomato competition, which I haven't got written down here, but yeah, I think it's made us all laugh over the past 3 or 4 months as we're all trying to grow the biggest tomato and people are infiltrating each other's veggie gardens and all sorts of things. But there's a lot of humour and that's helped us a lot as well. We're being very nice. So we're really nice to the funding bodies and appreciate what they've done and we're very grateful. But we're also willing to fight tooth and nail if there's an injustice or we're treated poorly or disregarded. And there was years ago now, the What About Sarsfield campaign was a passionate, united, multifaceted approach to address a bureaucratic bungle which saw our major funding application declared ineligible based on a nonsense rule. The decision was finally supported in a way, but the delay means we're still in our early days of our revitalisation of our recreation reserve and hall. Our volunteers are acknowledged within, so we acknowledge each other. So I'll be acknowledged by our group on Tuesday night for doing this, I'm sure, Kathy, won't I? I'm sure I will be. But anyway, yeah, we're acknowledged within the group. External staff, we've got some of them here, lots of them in the room. They've been invaluable, and also external dollars have enabled us to do all the things we've been able to do. So we really appreciate that and value that. As a group, we filter out external distractions. Well-intentioned, I'll call them do-gooders. There was lots of programs, particularly in the couple of years after the fires, where people had these fantastic programs, I won't name any of them, they weren't quite imposed, but the potential was for them to take over. And so we had a way of filtering out that sort of stuff because we had to remain focused on the focus, which is my next point, which is our plan and doing the things that we think are important. We work from a place of looking forward and optimism. So Sarsfield has a rich history, a sense of community connection had waned over the early 2000s. The summer bushfires were devastating to all, but the opportunity for Sarsfield 2030 are exciting. There's strong camaraderie within the group. So from strangers, I wouldn't have known any of the people in the group. From strangers, we've become connected. Some friends support each other, so that's been a really amazing thing. The group's got a fair sphere of influence, just by luck, I think. We've got loose connections to funding body representatives, politicians, media, local councils, service organisations, government. So that's sort of helped us along the way, having a little bit of an ear in the right places. Our progress plans and ideas are constantly shared. So where we're at now with our building is sort of nothing's happening, but we share that with our community through a whole lot of different means. Our SCA has a wide knowledge and experience base. We've got experts in water, the environment, veterinary science, fire protection, information technology, farming, small business and welfare and personal health care. Now that wasn't organised, that's just the way it's panned out. And we use the old chestnuts. Good food, kid fun and music to support community involvement. That's just my little trash attempt at putting all that together. So if you can make some sense out of that, good luck to you. And that's it. So thank you. We got time for questions, Eva? Yep, thank you.
Thanks, James. Let's make some time for questions because I bet there's a couple of burning questions here. Hey, Ev.
I'm just interested in what your statistics of homes rebuilt are in Sarsfield.
Yeah, well, the base was 80, and the last I heard, it was really hard to get that stuff to begin with, and I think we got it finally by asking the Shire to say, I don't know, Eva might have organised, I don't know, but it was under a third, and it could be up to near a third now, but there's still people not sure. We've got a lot of modulars, so there's still a lot of modulars in Sarsfield. I think there were 17 early days, but yeah, still pretty, and a lot of people are gone, and so places might be resold and they might be redeveloped, yeah. Yep. Sorry. Oh,
One from Helen.
John, I just wanted to say I work in the Omeo region. I want to thank you and your committee for including NSA in your lobbying to get the funding.
I think that helped us as well. Yeah, that helped everyone. I think it was. I used to say a lot. It was if you do the pub test, every single person in the pub would say that's injustice, and eventually, but still. The money's come through, but the action's still not quite there. But anyway. No, the money's, as I think Malakuta talked about, so I think it was 3.6 million back then, and now that's probably worth 2.4, if that, or something. But anyway, it'll be a good 2.4, I'm sure.
John, you talked about how by accident you got all those different backgrounds and experience on your group.
Yeah.
If that didn't happen by accident, do you think you would have thought about how to do that differently? Because it sounds like it's a really important aspect.
I reckon the other thing is within a group that's functioning well, it like we've got, say, Simon Hoff's a waterman, I've got an opinion about water as well, and my opinion's valued as much as his. His might be a bit more informed. So I don't think that's been a key thing. It was just when I was sitting under a tree trying to work out what made it work, that was one of the things that popped out to me. I thought, wow, we've got all these different... We haven't got 6 teachers or 5 nurses. We've got a real mix. So, yeah, by accident, but I don't think it's critical.
No, John, I think we learned the same thing.
Yeah.
A little story, don't share this story, it's got to stay in this room. When one of our committee members stood up to be elected, I thought, uh-oh, here we go. This lady is very, very green and has been quite the activist in the past, and I thought, oh, goodness me, I wonder how this will go.
Yeah.
The day that she told me she was leaving after 12 months hard work, I cried.
Yeah.
She had contributed so much wisdom and value and everything to our group.
Yeah.
You know, and I think that being worried about who the different people are is a lost opportunity to really learn from and grow together, learning from each other.
Yeah, good. Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah.
Getting my steps up.
So John's right in that there was... Am I
I hope
talking into this?
You're not going to say but. John's right, but...
No, it was the point you actually wanted to make. We couldn't do what Mallacoota did. There was no existing organisations.
No.
0. So that the initial group that... and the key players there did not, as far as I remember, get burnt out themselves. So they had a bit of stuff in the tank on the 1st of January to start using the hall, which the old hall didn't get burnt down, so that was the base for that first tranche of recovery, which all stopped on March the 23rd. But that group was the informal CRC that worked through that year, and that group who was working with BRV and discovered this whole ambit that needed a community recovery plan, and that they decided that seeing Sarsfield didn't have anything, that we needed Sarsfield Community Association to be ongoing, not just a 3-year CRC. So right from the constitution being worked up, it was planned as something that could go forward in Sarsfield. But at the AGM, which was, I'd been busy and hadn't taken part in that first year, but at the AGM where people were elected, and Simon leaned over the fence and said, "Are you going to come to this meeting?" And I didn't know any of the ones. So while there was voting, I couldn't have said who was at that meeting, and pretty much everyone else was the same. We'd got to know our neighbours really fast, our immediate neighbours in the street. When we had the street meeting, are you staying or going, and all that in the night before, certainly brought people together. COVID brought people together in some ways, because I've never seen so many people walking up and down our street as in for their hour's exercise. But it's been good, and while there are differences of opinions in the committee, well, the job of getting the job done means that they're resolved, and it's really been good.
Yeah. And even a little place like Clifton Creek, a tiny little community, you know, they had a school, so they had school reps. They had a tennis club, they had tennis club reps. They had a land care group, they had the fire brigade. So it's, Sarsfield had none of that. Whereas if the fire had occurred in 1990, there would have been a lot of stuff to do it that way. But yeah, it worked quite differently. It wasn't done on an organisational level. Yeah. I think
the question was, is that due to the proximity of Sarsfield?
Like the school closed in, Kennett era. The cricket club closed end of 1990s, just for all sorts of reasons. Tennis club. And a lot of the old-timers moved out or died or whatever. And then it became a bit of a, proximity, beautiful outlook, tree changes sort of stuff. So, Yeah, there've been people there for a long time, of course, but yeah, I think it became, like I wouldn't have known my neighbours. I might have waved before the fire, and now I could go and ask them to feed my chooks or whatever quite easily, and the same with the group. So yeah, and I think that's because you would have seen from the photos the number of people coming to events, and it wasn't just the first month, was a couple of Friday nights again, there'll be another one next Friday night, might be a bit smaller, so those people would have never been to a Sarsfield event. I'd never been to a Sarsfield event since I moved there, yeah. All right. Any others? No, done? Thank you.
Please thank John.
Thank you.
Oh, hang on, don't go without your prezi. Don't go without your thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Thanks, Ben.
Thanks so much. I think John highlights a few really important things, one being that each of our communities is really different, has completely its own context, own set of values, own way of working that's going to work for them. And I think communities need time in a really trauma-informed way to gather that together and work out how they're going to lead their own recovery and resilience. So thanks for really highlighting that so beautifully, John. I also love that you talked about the tap in and tap out, that Clifton Creek CRC actually quite formalised. They called it, you can tap in and tap out whenever you need to, and when you're ready to come back, you'll be welcomed. So it's a really good thing. I think that's what helps resilience in a committee and a group like that are working so hard. So many things. I've taken so many notes, but we're a little bit time poor. So